Alright guys, this is basically just a follow-up to the previous video. It was Robocop talking about frame generation. And in that video I mentioned that, frame generation's a tool. It's there for you if you want to use it. If you don't want to use it, that's great. If you like using it, that's great too. But I did mention that in certain games, especially games like Cyberpunk, when you've got ray tracing enabled, it may become more than just a want. It may become a necessity to use it. And so this is how I typically play Cyberpunk. So this is with ray tracing off. And like I said in that previous video, this game is not like as demanding as some people might think when you're not using ray tracing. So this is 1440p with FSR 3 on quality, and again, ray tracing turned off, and frame generation turned off. But everything is on high. So this is like the high preset, just with FSR 3 on quality. And yeah, as you can see, it averages around, I believe, about 70 to 80 frames per second. So yeah, this is how I would normally play this game. Yeah, because I've never really used frame generation before, I've never tried frame generation in this game before, for me, the ray tracing was kind of always out of the question, because, as you know, ray tracing is fairly demanding, and we're going to turn path tracing off for now. We're not talking about path tracing, but we will take a look at that at the end. Path tracing is basically full-blown ray tracing, where everything is fully ray traced, and it's extremely demanding. So ray tracing is demanding, path tracing is extremely demanding, but with all the ray tracing features on, except for path tracing, you'll see our frame rate will drop down to probably about 30 frames per second. Yeah, under 30 frames per second. So I certainly wouldn't want to play the game like this. It's borderline playable. You could definitely feel the lower frame rate, but yeah, I mean, considering it's under 30, it doesn't look terrible. This game has a lot of motion blur, so I think that's hiding it. But yeah, again, definitely wouldn't want to play it like this. So, can frame generation, help? Well, yeah, obviously it can. But like I said, in this game I've never tried it before, so let's take a look at it and see how it looks. So frame generation on. Now unfortunately in this game, at least with the AMD FSR frame generation, when you turn it on or off, you do have to reset the game. So I'll reset the game and I'll be back in a second. Okay, and we're back in the game. Just to show you, none of the settings have changed. We're still at 1440p, and we're still FSR 3 quality. We still have all the ray tracing features on except for path tracing, and everything is still on high. And with frame generation, we should be doubling the frame rate. So when we're just below 30, we really should be just below 60. And yeah, we're looks like about 55 frames per second. It definitely looks a little bit smoother. I don't know if it necessarily feels much better, but I would say this is like getting borderline playable. I think some people could play it like this, but I would like to see that frame rate, at or just above 60. So if we just turn one thing, maybe we'll turn FSR, I guess, up from quality to balanced, technically kind of turning it down in terms of image quality. We're turning up how aggressive the upscaling is going to be, and so our native resolution has gone down. So with FSR 3 on balanced, again, we're still on everything on high with all the ray tracing features turned on, except for path tracing. And there you go. We are just over 60 frames per second, which honestly, this is like pretty impressive. I would have never expected to be able to play this game on high with ray tracing on and be at 60 frames per second. So, in this particular case, in this game with these settings, frame generation has really transformed the game. It's turned it from either I can't use ray tracing at all or it's unplayable, to it being arguably playable here with ray tracing on. So again, love it or hate it, it's definitely an option. It's definitely a tool that's there for you if you want to use it. And again, in certain games, under certain circumstances, I think this is kind of proving itself here. Again, this is a mid-range card from 4 years ago, and we're running at high with ray tracing on at 60 frames per second. I hear someone in the back saying, that's not a 4-year-old Jeep. Yeah, well, technically you're right. This is a Radeon RX 6750 XT. I believe it came out in 2022. But, like, realistically, this is basically just an RX 6700 XT. The 6750 XT was really just a 6700 XT with, like, ever so slightly faster memory. For all intents and purposes, this is basically an RX 6700 XT, and that is a mid-range card that came out in 2021. So yeah, this is basically a mid-range graphics card from 4 years ago. Oh, yeah, so one thing I wanted to show you guys, just in case, if you're not, like, super versed with ray tracing and ray traced reflections and, like, why you would need ray traced reflections, this is the perfect spot to show you. So let's go into the settings here. I'm going to turn off ray tracing. And so what we have right now is the screen space reflection. So if you look at all these vending machines and then you look on the ground, you can see the reflection of the vending machines on the ground. But if I pan the camera down, as the vending machines start to come out of my view, you'll notice that the reflections on the ground also disappear. This is a artifact of screen space reflections. This is just how screen space reflections work. I mean, it's taking what's in my screen view and, like, flipping it and reflecting it on the ground. It's genius, and it's a low-cost way to get really, honestly, really nice looking reflections on the ground. But, you know, it has these kind of limitations. And like I said, in some games where you're almost always looking forward, it's not a huge deal. But again, when you pan down to the ground, a lot of times these screen space reflections will show their weakness. So if we go back into settings, turn on ray tracing, but again, not path tracing, we will see that these reflections now aren't based on screen space. You know, the vending machines don't have to be in my field of view for the reflections to exist. You know, everything in the world now will have its reflections. You know, everything all around me has its reflections. And so that's kind of one of the main differences with ray traced reflections. But, you know, it's also the fact that in theory you could see reflections on things that are behind you, or even yourself in reflections. So, yeah, even reflections in reflections sometimes. So there's a lot more to it than just that, but that's like a really simple demonstration. If you guys just, you know, if you weren't aware, there you go. Maybe you learned something. But yeah, so again, with ray traced, you know, all the ray tracing except for the path tracing, very playable. But I've mentioned this path tracing a few times, and kind of hinted that we're going to take a look at that. So let's turn on path tracing. Now, this is way, way, way beyond anything I should be doing on a 4-year-old mid-range card. Again, path tracing is extremely demanding, and this can even bring like a 4090 to its knees. Like, even a 4090 needs to use frame generation to stay above 60 if you're at like upscaled 4K, you know, DLSS. With everything on high, obviously. So this is going to just tank, but just for shits and giggles, we'll take a look at this. So this is path traced, and even with frame generation on, we're at a very cinematic 24 frames per second. And at this low of a frame rate, you can start to see there's some sort of an artifacting with the motion. I have to assume this is the frame generation just doesn't work right when the frame rate is too low. So there you go. The frame generation, as far as I can tell, under normal circumstances, as long as your base frame rate is within a reasonable, maybe 40 to 50 frames per second, or higher, ideally. But let's just say 50 frames per second. I don't really notice any visual downgrade to using it. I said the same thing in Robocop. If you need to use it, why not use it if you don't notice any visual downgrades in using it? And, same thing in this game. Under normal circumstances, I didn't really notice any visual downside to using frame generation. But again, obviously at this low of a frame rate, I think it's just not able to keep up. Again, this is 24 frames per second, if that, 22 frames per second, with frame generation on. So this means we're rendering a native, probably 11 frames per second. But yeah, this path tracing is really cool, and this really is the future of video games. I mean, love it or hate it, this is here to stay. And as our graphics cards and consoles get more powerful, this is how all video games will eventually be rendered, in my opinion. Keep in mind, even the PS5 Pro doesn't have an option for path tracing. Like, this is beyond what even a PS5 Pro is capable of. So like I said, well beyond really the realistic capabilities of a card like this. So again, we're going to turn off path tracing, but everything else on. And again, high preset, everything else. And the fact I can play this on the high preset with all this ray tracing on and be at or even over 60 frames per second is actually, I'm honestly very impressed. And again, like I said, I'm fairly new to frame generation. Literally that video of me showing you me using frame generation in Robocop, that's, honest to God, the first time I've ever used frame generations. The first time I've ever seen it with my own eyes on my own hardware. And like I said, I couldn't tell the difference visually. And I same thing here. I mean, I can't. It doesn't look any worse having frame generation on. It's just running at a better frame rate. And again, if that means I can turn on ray tracing or keep the presets on high, then in the end I'm getting better visual image quality overall. Oh wow, that looks cool. Yeah, the reflection on that glass sure does look cool. Yeah, I'm curious how that looks without ray tracing on. Oops, yeah, ray tracing off, apply. Well, it still looks okay. Oh no, it's screen space. You see? Just like when we panned down and they disappeared, but now it's when we pan to the left they disappear. So even on the side of this glass, that is just screen space reflection of these signs over here. And so when we're looking at an angle like more oblique, I don't know. I'm not a math guy. When we're looking at a steeper angle, that disappears. So yeah, even there, you can see the difference with the ray tracing. That these signs, it's not screen space reflections anymore. So yeah. Now I don't think in this game you see yourself in the reflections, which is kind of weird. But how accurate are the like there's a white car going by? Yeah, you see? So you can see stuff that's behind you that normally you wouldn't be able to see either. So yeah, there you go. A good look at ray tracing, and just a general idea that this is even like doable on my GPU. This is very, very cool.